Oh, can you explain game theory? I always hear this tossed around and people talk about it, and I have a kind of general idea of it, but I feel like a lot of people just nod their head and go, "Oh yeah, game theory." Sure.
So basically it's technically a branch of economics. But really all it is like it's kind of like the math of making decisions. So
Right.
It's like I need to choose between option A and option B. Option A is going to happen maybe with like 20% probability that option B will be 80%. But if I do option A, then that's going to pay out this much and option B pays out this much. So, so now you can have like kind of a payoff matrix. And game theory is just like kind of the
Is it like behavioral economics?
It's somewhat, but it's much more quantified.
Okay.
Although, I mean, behavioral economics can be too. But yeah, it's just like how can we formalize the different payoffs and the like decision points in a game or in whatever it is you do. Because like technically economics is a bit of a game, right? You're like, you're trying to model what your competitors are going to do. So basically any situation where there's some kind of competitive or collaborative interaction where there's different types of payoffs. Game theory is the study of that.
Is this why your podcast is called Win-Win?
Yeah, well, partially. So while I was playing poker, after a while, my husband and I and a couple of other poker players got interested in philanthropy. We met some people who just sort of explained that philanthropy is best done when you apply a kind of like poker thinking lens, a kind of game theory lens almost, or like an economic lens to it, because there's so many problems on earth. Everyone, and everyone's like, mine is the most important, etc. Like, how do you prioritize?
Right.
What are the biggest problems? And then, okay, within those biggest problems, which are actually the most effective ways of solving them?
Right.
And so we got really interested into this like idea of like how to do philanthropy most effectively. And we like started a sort of like organization, a movement that sort of did that research and encouraged poker players to donate to these different places. And while we were doing that, it became kind of clear that underlying most of our biggest problems is game theory, but kind of like game theory gone wrong, that creates these lose-lose, like race to the bottom type spirals. Like why you get
like voting against your own interests.
Exactly. Like that's one. Or, why is it that some countries end up pouring more and more of their like GDP into military arms races?
You see it even with like homelessness in California, I think. You pour so much money into it and it's a problem that keeps getting worse. And so this is like everyone's losing. The homeless people are losing.
Right.
Someone's winning, but...
Yeah, I mean, in that instance, that's really like kind of an example of just the government doing such ineffective measures, or they're optimizing for the wrong thing. They're perhaps optimizing for looking good as opposed to doing good.
Right, okay.
Because often those things are not aligned.
Right.
If they are aligned, then great. You've got all the incentives pointing in the right direction. But other times they diverge.
Right.
And that's where you get this like misallocation of funds. But more specifically relating to like what I would consider like a lose-lose game would be some new, well, like when nuclear weapons came along, right? This new technology came along, and where everyone was worried that like, oh, well, now Russia's starting to build more and more nuclear weapons. And if we don't match them, if we don't build enough in response to defend if they attack us, or at least to like to destroy them, because actually you have mutually assured destruction, right? That's how you like keep the threat at bay. So as they pour more money in and build more and more, you have to do it in response.
Right.
And so that's this like game theoretic trap. But the trouble is, if this keeps going, A, you end up building so many nuclear weapons you could kill everyone on Earth. But B, it takes away more and more money that could be spent on other important stuff like healthcare or, infrastructure that your population needs. So you get these like arms race dynamics. And I became so obsessed with like trying to understand how to stop these kind of lose-lose games that's what this idea of like the win-win show, podcast is about. It's like, how do we fix the incentives so that when we have these competitive scenarios, they're actually a race to the top and not a race to the bottom?